Looking back in time, Iambic echoes. The Yale Papyrus contains a number of epigrams that have been categorized as scopic. The scopic epigram flourished as a distinct epigrammatic subgenre during the Neronian era, but its roots have been detected much earlier in the Hellenistic age. A number of Hellenistic epigrams survive, which, though they have been categorized as dedicatory, separchal, erotic, etc., have a clear scopic tone. One of the most characteristic examples is Meleager's erotic epigram, and this is handout number 1, Anthologia Pallatina 5.204. By using a series of nautical metaphors, the hetera Timarion is lampooned by reason of her old age, ugliness, and inability to endure sex. The mockery and satire found in such Hellenistic epigrams was inherited partly from Iapos, and the Hellenistic epigrammatists deployed the iambic mode in various ways. My aim today is the following. After examining certain ways in which the Hellenistic epigrammatists adopted and adapted the iambic mode, I intend to explore the degree to which and how the scopic epigrams of the Yale Papyrus and those attributed to Palladas in the Greek anthology preserved and refreshed the iambic style and tone. Interestingly, points of convergence and divergence exist both between the two corpora which have been attributed to Palladas and the Hellenistic epigrams, and between the corpora themselves. Two preliminary observations should be made. Firstly, the fragmentary state of some epigrams found in the papyrus makes it difficult to place a generic label on them. Secondly, although we cannot label any of these epigrams as purely erotic, dedicatory, separchal, etc., the blending of different subgenres in these poems is not worthy. Let us look at epigram 24 of the papyrus, and this is handout number 2, a scopic epigram on a political subject which refers to some local discord or strife. The interlocutor suggests that ambassadors should be sent to Hades, and a man called Heron is believed to be willing to go to Pluto if he is bright. Apart from the clear influence of comedy, the epigram also parodies separchal epigrams where men and women are said to be snatched by, led, or go to Hades, the phraseology employed as a euphemism for death. We can compare, for instance, the epigram 7.67, handout number 3, where in line 7 to 8, Diogenes, with clear irony, says that as he goes to Hades, he takes all his possessions with him. And you can see the phrase par heidan erchon erchon that resembles proston plutona katerthin in line 27 of epigram 24 of the papyrus. This play with the sepulchral epigrammatic subtype seems to continue with the word kisto in the papyrus at the beginning of line 29. The verb is used as the passive voice of Tiffany with the sense let 5 talents be deposited, as Kevin Wilkinson has noted, but it can also allude, I believe, through its common meaning lie dead, lie buried, to sepulchral epitaphs, where it is often employed as the first word of a verse for emphatic purposes. As my examples, I have included in the handout under number 4, Anthologia Pallatina 7.499, where the dead body of a sailor lies by the rocks of Icaria, and we have the use of the verb kite, and a mock epitaph, handout number 5, where it is said that Polyxenus, being drunk, fell from a slippery hillside and died. He now lies, again kite, first word, far from Smyrna. So, to sum up so far, in a few words, epigram 24 of the papyrus seems to revitalize the topos of parodying the sepulchral subtype. Iambic echoes seem also to exist in epigrams 3 and 4, and these are included in handout number 6. In epigram 3, the speaker seems to say to a certain Clematius that he is poor because of being frank. In epigram 4, he probably asks Clematius to pay for his treatment from podagra. In the 9th book of the Greek anthology, we have a similar request for financial aid, and this is an epigram attributed to Palladas. This is number 7 in your handout, in which the speaker, whose salary has been cut off, asks from Theo to protect him and not to let him die again in poverty. All these 3 epigrams seem to form an amalgam of epidictic and scopic elements. Why? First of all, poverty forms an integral part of the self-representation of Palladas, and this characteristic of his poetic persona echoes his poetic model Hipponax, who also represented himself as poor in a number of poems. Also, what we need to remember is that there is a variety in the tone of the Iambic and scopic poetry, ranging from harsh attacks to humorous criticism. For instance, we can look at the scopic epigram handout number 8, varying the topic of poverty again. In this poem, the speaker expresses a complaint. He should not be hated, as it is not his fault, but fortune's that he is poor. More interestingly, epigram 4 might rework and refresh a motif which dates back to Hipponax, the idea of a poor man asking for assistance because he suffers. And I will now refer to poems 9 till 11. In fragment 32 of Hipponax, the speaker asks from Hermes a cloak, a tunic, sandals, felt shoes, and 60 gold statters. In fragment 34, he complains again because the addressee, again probably Hermes, has not given him a thick cloak as a remedy against cold nor felt shoes. In fragment 39, he says in a euphemistic manner that he'll commit suicide if the addressee does not send him a bushel of barley so that he may drink a potion from the goats as a cure for his suffering. The term therapias, used in line 21 of the Papyrus to describe the treatment from podagra, might indirectly echo pharmakon if Hipponax forms an intertext and as a synonym, which is used both in fragment 34 and fragment 39. So, the similarities between the epigrams in the Papyrus and Hipponax point towards the scopic nature of these poems. I now turn our attention to Hellenistic epigrams in order to explore the ways in which they engage with the premises of Iambic poetry, and then to compare them with the epigrams of the Yale Papyrus and the Palladian corpus in the Greek anthology. A number of Hellenistic sepulchral epigrams on Archilochus and Hipponax survive, which highlight Iambic as the most prominent feature of Iambos. For instance, in handout number 12, one is warned to be careful in case he passes nearby Hipponax's tomb, because the poet is a dormant bitter wasp, likely to be a weapon. Even from Hades, the epigram says, Hipponax's fiery words know how to bring destruction, and the verses allude to the fate of the victims of his Iambic attacks, who, according to the biographical tradition, committed suicide, Boupalos and his brother. In the Yale Papyrus and the corpus of the Palladian epigrams in the Greek anthology, no such fictitious sepulchral epigram exists. This is intriguing, since Palladas clearly drew inspiration from the Iambic poets, as it is apparent inter alia by the close reworking of the verses. And I have in handout numbers 13 and 14 two examples. In number 13, we read, "Every woman is a source of annoyance, but she has 2 good seasons, the one in her bridal chamber and the other when she is dead." The distich closely revokes Hipponax's fragment 68, handout number 14. 2 days in a woman's life are sweetest, when she gets married and when she's carried out dead. I should mention, though, that there is one mention of the term Iambos in Palladas 11.291, and this is handout number 15, and the term instantly brings in the reader's mind the generic forebears of the scopic epigram. The speaker attacks a man saying that he sells iambic verses as a shopman sells oil, the joke turning against him since he himself assails the versifier in iambic trimeters. Alternatively, this could be seen as a self-ironic second-person address that plays with genre expectations. This man is supposed to be getting rich by selling iambics, while poverty is a basic feature of the poetic persona of both Palladas and Hipponax. Also, in the Yale Papyrus in epigram 11 on Demetrius, this is handout number 16, we might have traces of the word Iambic, and the content of this fragmentary epigram is unclear, but if the reading is correct, then the word would have acted as a signpost to the literary roots of the scopic epigram, and as Kevin Wilkinson interestingly suggested, the phrase Smila echi ododas in line 8 might refer to the teeth of the biting invective. So if the reading and interpretation are correct, then the epigram, as the fictitious epitaphs mentioned above, defines invective as the core of the iambos. Now, the absence of the related material in the Yale Papyrus, meaning of fictitious eparcham epigrams, and also in the Palladian corpus in the Greek anthology, might reflect that the topic has been perceived as a cliché. On the other hand, the bulk of fictitious eparcham epigrams on poets of the archaic era, including the two iambographers, Homer, Sappho, and others, belongs to the Hellenistic period. This fact points towards another possibility. Since during the Hellenistic period we are at the first steps of the development of the epigram as a literary form, this type of fictitious eparcham epigrams on the archaic poets possibly mirrors the epigrammatist's desire to point towards an identifiable literary pedigree and to create a clear link between their poems and the preceding poetic tradition. Centuries later on, this need does not exist anymore, since the literary epigram is a fully developed poetic form, and this might explain the lack of such epigrams from our sources. I move now on to the issue of the typology of the victims of the epigrams in the Papyrus and the other sources. Iambos was flexible as far as the register of its targets is concerned. Archilopos and Hipponax's assaults were directed against specific targets, the poets turning their art to the service of the personal hostilities. Simonides' attack, though, in poem 7, is leveled against the whole female genre. Hellenistic epigrams are mainly targeted against individuals who are attacked because of the physical or moral vices, and popular targets include the hetairai, gluttons, and drinkers. Due to time limits, I'll only refer to one example, a favorite of mine, and this is handout number 17, where the poem attacks three aging prostitutes who prey upon their victims, and it ends in the following words: "So take your ships and flee from Aphrodite's pirate bricks, for they are worse enemies than the sirens." The distich, in great hyperbole, stresses that these women bring destruction upon men, and it can be viewed either as a warning against the three hetairai or as an admonition against the whole institution of prostitution. An interesting contradiction exists between the Yale Papyrus and the Palladian epigrams in the Greek anthology. In the Papyrus, epigrammatic attacks are mainly directed against specific individuals, especially against politicians. In the victims of the poet's verses are added those who transcend social norms, this feature of invective dating back to the archaic iambos. And here we have epigrams number 7 and 8, where we have the citizen from Hermopolis called Hermios being accused of adultery, and the one called Nilus, who is a criminal from Hermopolis. On the contrary, in the Palladian epigrams of the Greek anthology, there is a much wider cast of targets. Firstly, there are poems that attack named or anonymous individuals, and there is a great variety as far as the moral or physical vices are concerned. A few categories: we have epigrams against government officials, stingy givers of gifts and hosts, epigrams against professionals, including surgeons, philosophers, grammarians, and others. Secondly, in the Palladian epigrams of the Greek anthology, one finds mockery directed against groups of people and not simply individuals. Attacks against the wealthy and the women are popular in the corpus. This kind of flexibility contradicts the rather limited types of targets found in the Yale Papyrus. But the narrow spectrum of targets in the Papyrus can be attributed to the small number of epigrams whose content is clear. Other categories might have been included in the missing part of the Papyrus or in those epigrams which are too fragmentary. Moving on now to certain ways in which epigrams sharpen the invective, I will use, as far as the Hellenistic epigrams are concerned, case studies where men and women are accused of gluttony and excessive drinking. Hedulus epigrams show how the Hellenistic epigrammatists employed mythical exempla to sharpen their invective, and this technique is inherited once more from the Iambos. For instance, in Hipponax fragment 128, and this is handout number 18, Evrymedontiadis' stomach is described as the Charybdis who gulps down the sea, the description stressing that he swallows everything and consumes wine outright. Let us look just at one example from the Hellenistic corpus, and this is handout number 19, in which Hedulus attacks a monk called Agis. According to the speaker, Agis' gluttony is the reason why he should not be admitted to a banquet, and the man is ironically characterized as the produce of the Dishes, line 2. The parallelism suggests, as Gowan Page argue, that Agis' ingenuity in getting at food is inexhaustible. The next phrase expands this idea, since Agis is said to be capable of taking any shape that he wants. Then, in the final distich, the man is comically compared to another shapeshifter, Zeus, who changed into golden rain to manage his way into Danae's chamber. Several Palladian epigrams of the Greek anthology make use and refresh this technique. For instance, in handout number 2011.284, Lycaon, the son of the mythical Akkadian king Pelasgus, is used as an equivalent of Daemonicus from Chalkis, who is accused as being both pious and impious. In the Papyrus, although no clear-cut examples exist of a myth having been used for comic purposes, specific epigrams suggest that myth could have formed a medium for intensifying the mockery. I have already referred to epigram 11 on Demetrius. Here in line 7, there is a mention of the name Inomos. As Kevin Wilkinson notes, there was a 2nd century Cynic philosopher Inomos of Gadara, and the reference to him would match the possible mention of the biting nature of invective. But it's also possible that we may have here an allusion to the myth of Inomos, although the fragmentary state of the epigram does not allow us to understand the connotation that the myth would have in the poem. In epigram 33, handout number 21, Phaethon, and most probably his sisters who wept along the banks of the river, are mentioned. Although the function of myth in epigram 33 is unclear, it is noteworthy that Lucilius used Phaethon in a scopic epigram mocking a painter. This is handout number 22. A painting of Phaethon by Menestratus deserves fire, we read in line 4. Here there is a reference to Phaethon's death caused by Zeus' thunderbolt, and an implication that the painting is no good and should be destroyed. So Lucilius' epigram shows that the myth of Phaethon could be used for satire. Last but not least, epigram 3, and this is handout number 6, in page 1, with its Scopic overtones, makes use of the term Aginoridi. Apart from being a patronymic for the descendants of Agenor, this could be an epithet of the mythical prophet and king of Thrace, Thunefs, who ended up in old age living as a poor man, sought and received help from the Argonauts. So, as Kevin Wilkinson argues, there might be an allusion or comparison between him and the speaker, who is definitely self-represented as a poor man. Hyperbole and accumulation of details in one's satirical description are also techniques inherited from Iambic and found in the Hellenistic epigram. Let us look at Archilokos 118, and this is handout number 23, a characteristic case study where a woman is fiercely attacked by reason of her old age. In these verses, there is an accumulation of details regarding the woman's loss of beauty. Her skin no longer blossoms, she resembles dried up land, old age destroys her body, desire has left her face, and the metaphor of the stormy winds emphasizes the withering and decay of her body. Evident is also the element of hyperbole, since the woman's skin is wrinkled, not simply lined, and it has not merely lost its beauty, but it is dried up, resembling dry stalks. From the corpus of Hellenistic epigrams, I've chosen to present to you one epigram again written by Rhetorical. This is included as number 24, where he attacks a woman called Clio, obviously hetera, who dives into a conger eel with such gluttony that makes the symposiast feel disgust. The speaker's repulsion and invective against the woman reaches its apex when she is characterized as our Medusa. In line 5, and she is said to turn the symposiast into stone when seeing her eating the conger eel, lines 5 to 6. The parallelism to the mythical monster enlivens and emphasizes the attack, and the parentheses between Corvus and Gogru, which are placed in succession, emphasizes the hyperbole. Palladas' epigrams in the Greek anthology refresh this characteristic of the invective. In handout number 24, we have a nice example. The poem is directed against the orator Maurus, who is lampooned because of physical defects. The speaker mocks him because of his nose, mouth, and way of talking. And here is the accumulation of detail. There is clear escalating hyperbole. His nose is parallel to an elephant's trunk, his lips are said to weigh a pound each, and the sound emitting from them is said to be able to kill, not simply hurt the one who hears them. As with Hydalus, the parenthesis between phthongon and phonon, the words placed closely together, sharpens the hyperbole and adds spice to the invective. In the Yale Papyrus, although we do not have a similar case study with such an accumulation of detail and such hyperbole, Hieron's alleged willingness in epigram 30, to which I referred, to go to Hades, is hyperbolic, so I will go to the conclusions. So, when compared to the Hellenistic epigrams, the poems in the Yale Papyrus and the Palladian ones in the Greek anthology seem to adopt, adapt, and refresh the iambic mode and basic features of their poetic ancestors. Mythical exempla are found in the Palladian epigrams of the Greek anthology, and myth could have been used in the papyrus for comic purposes as well. Hyperbole, wordplay, and contrast between past and present are there in both sources, giving boost to the attacks. Epigrams 3 and 4 show us that the range in the tone of the invective continues to exist, and also confirm how easily the grammatic subgenres are blended together. None of the two sources includes epigrams on the iambographers, but still it becomes clear that invective is considered to be the most prominent feature of iambic style. Although there seems to be greater variety as far as the range of the targets is concerned in the Palladian epigrams of the Greek anthology, this can be attributed to the fragmentary state of the papyrus, which might create a skewed impression of our perception of the surviving material, or might reflect editorial choices. One thing remains certain, that both sources share an embeddedness in the tradition. The Yale Papyrus, with its topicality and emphasis on politics, refreshes the scopic tradition, but Lucia Floridi will tell you more about these distinct features of the papyrus. Thank you for the attention.